Welcome to the Rustic Garden. Today's April 7th and today's video is about starting your tomatoes with worm castings. And you can use worm castings for any kind of plant you want to start indoors. This is also a sponsored video. I've been working with Vermisterra for about 2 years figuring out how I can best use their products in a garden. And before I recommend a product, I want to test it. Everything you see here has been grown with their worm castings and with the worm casting tea. I'm going to go over the recipes, show you exactly how I make the mixes, and we're going to seed start some tomatoes, but we're also going to thin some tomatoes. We're also going to feed them some of the worm casting tea, and I'm just going to show you how you can use that product to grow all your indoor seed starts. It's an outstanding product. Now, worm castings, I like to say they're the end product of nature because of the castings from worms. They're not like organic fertilizers like blood meal and bone meal, where you have to throw it into either a compost pile or into your earth beds, and then that product has to break down and then release a soluble form of NP and K to your plants. Worm castings are ready to go. They have NP and K in there. I'm going to explain that in a second. They also have growth hormones, humic acid, the good fungi in there, the mycorrhizae, all the stuff your plants need to grow. And you can see from these examples, everything is doing really, really well. Real quick, I have peppers, lettuce, greens, oregano, thyme, sage. These are all my tomatoes. These are all flowers. Back here is lavender, rosemary, mint, some more peppers back there. All grown with the castings and the casting tea. Now, the most important thing to take away from this video is don't overfeed your seed starts with whatever product you use. You've heard me talk about this before. You've heard me hinting through several videos that I've been using the worm castings. The whole goal is just a low amount of NP and K, and that will take care of your plants. If you use too much fertilizer, you can really, really damage them. You can always add more, but you can't subtract. And real quick, the worm castings have a 0.6, a 0.7, and a 0.2 NP and K. Extremely low, very effective. The worm casting tea is a 0.1, a 0.1, a 0.1 NP and K. You know, I feed these plants about every 7 to 10 days with that. Extremely low. Compost, when you use your compost outdoors, that's almost a 0.1, 0.1, and 0.1. Very low. Copy nature. Nice and low NP and K. Your plants will do extremely well. I'm also going to talk to you about how we can seed start tomatoes indoors, but use the outdoors to grow the transplants so that you don't need to have indoor grow lights to grow your own transplants. And you can use that principle for anything that you see on this table. All right, let me clean this up, get the starting mix. We'll get to the recipes for the worm castings, and we'll get to planting. Okay, we'll get to the recipe in about 15 seconds. These are off camera, but I'm really proud. Look how well the rosemary's doing. It's been growing since January. This is mint. This is lavender. It's doing extremely well, and if you notice some of the onions dying off, anyone guess what happened? Forgot to water them. But they've been doing extremely well, just living off the worm casting tea. Now we're going to thin these towards the end of the video, and this is where I'm going to show you how to use the tea. To make the mix that I'm using, if you actually read their product, it talks about using a little bit more in container mixes out there. This is something that I use for the indoor seed starting mix. So again, this is just focused on seed starting. This is a 6-quart container. It says on the bottom, that's how I know. I take 1/2 of a cup, a half a cup of worm castings to 3 quarts. So this is going to get 1 full cup. 6 quarts makes 1.5 gallons. And you can raise that to a full cup. So you could do a half a cup to 3 quarts or 1 cup to 3 quarts, depending on what you want to do. Both work well. If you add in more, you might notice germination is a little bit slower. You don't need to worry about that. It's slower because this is pH neutral, and I'm using a peat-based starting mix. So if your pH level goes up in your starting mixes, sometimes they germinate a little bit more slowly, because plants like a specific pH to germinate quickly, and sometimes the more acidic it is, the better. So this is 6 quarts going into here. Now in my other videos, I really stress to hydrate this with boiling water. You will kill out any potential fungus gnats, And you really want to do that. You also kill out any kind of harmful fungus or anything that might be in there. That's usually less of an issue. The real issue is these starting mixes harbor fungus gnat eggs. Now, these are going to be grown not indoors, they're going to be grown outdoors. And they will collect some bugs from outside, but you don't want to risk having an infestation. Use boiling water. So in this mix, we're going to go ahead and put in a half a cup of the castings to 3 quarts. That's half, and then another cup to the other 3 quarts. And just mix it well through the entire mix. That's all you need for your fertilizer for your plants to get started. Your seed starts will live off the seed coat for a little bit. Now that everything's moist and well mixed, everything will start interacting. That's when you're going to get the benefit down the line of the humic acid, the good fungi, all the benefits of worm castings. Here's another part of the experiment using the Vermistera worm castings for the starting mix. That's the only fertilizer I used. These are my pepper seed starts. They've been growing about 5 weeks in there. They're going to be potted up into cups tonight. But it was a half a cup of Vermistera premium worm castings into the starting mix, and then these were fed when it got to size about every 7 days with 2 ounces of the Vermistera worm casting tea, and they've done really well. Over here, just a real quick look, this is all the greens that I started growing in January for videos, and I kept them alive to actually eat. So I'll be cutting these back and putting them into a salad tonight. But these were all also grown with the Vermistera worm castings and fed with the worm casting tea, and they've done wonderfully. And it's March 10th, so these have been kept alive, doing well since really the beginning of January. Really trump the chemical fertilizers and the organic fertilizers. This is everything nature intended for your plants to use to grow. Now let me move this out of the side real quick. You can start your tomatoes in containers. If you're not going to do a lot of seed starts, I do a lot. Just go ahead and use your starting mix in here, and then you don't have to pot them up later. So this will fit maybe what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll get 12 transplants using a cup this container this size. I sell these on my seed shop. But we're going to use the 4 cells because I haven't started my indeterminate varieties yet. Today is April 7th. I start them last. And I'm going to grow these all using the outdoor light. Now to do that, you're basically taking this tray out during the day. No rocket science, but there's a couple of tips. If it's 40 degrees or warmer, take this out during the day. Just let it sit outside. Come nighttime, even if it doesn't get to freezing, bring it inside, because what's going to happen is the warmth of the house at night will keep the root systems warm, will keep the seeds warm, they're going to germinate quicker, they're going to grow better. If this was just sitting outside, even if it was 40 degrees at night, it's going to slow the whole process. So this comes in at night, goes out during the day when it's 40 degrees, and you're able to seed start that way. Now tomatoes will take longer. Instead of germinating in 5 to 7 days indoors, it may take 7 to 10 days or a little bit longer. But they're going to germinate and they're going to be perfectly fine. The other thing you need to do is this can't get rained on. Hard rain's going to splash everything around and mess it up. So I use a storage box, a clear storage box, one that would fit over this, and I just put it over the top. And that will also help keep some warmth inside there. You can see I'll link my video for winter sowing. You can see how I use the containers for that. So that's a perfectly great way to start tomatoes indoors, but use the outdoors to grow the transplants. You don't need the grow lights. They're going to be acclimated to the outdoors, so you don't even need to transition them outside. You can let them grow in here, grow in these containers, and then it can go right into your container. Your bigger containers are into your ground. Now I like using these 4 seed cells for tomatoes because they give them more space and they can actually even stay in here. You don't need to transplant them up depending on the timing. All right, now setup, we'll do 1 here, and pretty straightforward. You've seen me do this 100 times. Once you fill it like this, make sure you press it in. You want a nice solid starting base. And that's what we're going to plant the tomatoes in. Now, all worm castings are not the same. One of the things that I like about Vermisterra is their castings are aged 7 to 10 years. So, you know, the worms do their things, they collect it, they put it in a pile. They're in Southern California, they've got the perfect temperature and climate for it. They age 7 to 10 years. In that time frame, the organic matter further breaks down, everything breaks down, and you're just left with castings and broken down organic matter. Now, why is that important? You're going to pay more for this at 10 pounds, but it's almost solely worm castings. Let me give you an example compared with this other product called earthworm castings. Nothing wrong with this product, it's just very different. The cost is reflected in that this is not all worm castings, it's also just compost, and there's a lot of water weight in there. So this is the premium worm castings from Vermisterra. It's all screened. You're getting your money's worth because you're getting what you want. You want the castings. Now, I actually did an experiment where I took 1 cup worth of the castings right out of here, dried it, figured out how much water weight's in there. Water weight is about 18%, which is pretty normal. Most products are like 15 to 25%. Did the same thing with the castings here, and you can see that it's very different. It looks darker, and that dark part is actually compost. So when I dried this, this was about 47% water weight. So you're spending a lot more on water in that product. Now, what's the difference? The Vermisterra's aged 7 to 10 years. This is castings that if you were like doing it yourself and you had a casting box going, the worm castings drop, organic matter drops, they collect the organic matter that falls, the castings that's mixed in there, and they package it. So yes, it's castings, but it's not nearly anything like this product. And I just want you to know, so when you're picking what you want to spend your money on, it's better sometimes to spend more and get what you want than to spend less and get water weight and compost. That's just not what you're looking for. And there's no real regulation. Anything can say worm castings. All right, let me fill this and we will get to planting the tomato seeds in here. The seed cells are set up. These are the 4 compartment seed cells. I do sell these, and if you time it right, you can actually just keep your transplant in here and it can go right out into your garden. What do I mean by that? To seed start tomatoes indoors, you want to figure out when it's regularly going to be 50-degree nights in your area at night and 70-degree days. They're warm weather plants. If you put these out early when the nights are in the 40s and the days are in the 60s, they're just going to sit there. So figure out when you have regular 50-degree nights, 70+ degree days, count backwards, and you can start these anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks before they would go outside. And it all depends on, you know, what you want to do with them. Now, I quickly set up my Brandywines. These are Kentucky beefsteak. These are red beefsteaks, and these are my Brandywine yellow, Brandywine pink, Brandywine red, and ooh, this one should actually say Brandywine black. Let me do that. I will forget. And that's a Brandywine black. And these are also sold at my seed shop. Now, always tag date so you know when you've seed started them. And you can start these 4 to 8 weeks. If you're starting them 8 weeks early, they're probably going to have to be moved out of here into a container. If you're doing it 4 to 6 weeks, they can probably stay in here. We're going to thin these. These have been grown in the 4 cells too. I'll show you how to do that. So, I already put the seeds down to save some time. I put 1 seed there, 1 seed there. At least 2 seeds. You don't want to be waiting around for 1 seed to germinate. They may not. You could put 2 here, however you want to do it, but I wouldn't put more than 4 in this space. Press it down, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. You don't need to worry about it that much. I've done experiments where I put seeds down here and they've grown perfectly well. This starting mix was set up with the Vermisterra castings at 1/2 cup per 3 quarts. Whoop, that one just jumped. And that's all I do, is press them in like that. And these are good to go. Now, you don't start the worm casting tea until your transplants are up and they have their first or second true sets of leaves. We'll talk about that in a second. So these are set up, let's just say, and they are ready to go. We would bottom water. Bottom watering means I fill the tray to about here. Whatever they don't drink up in 20 minutes, I pour the water out and you're good to go. You water when the tops dry out. Since we're going to be moving these in and out outside, they're going to need to be watered more often than if you have them indoors. But again, these are going to go outside when the days are 40 plus. You're going to put a container over the top when needed so they don't get rained on. And you're just going to move them in at night. The warmth at night will take care of the roots, the seed. They're going to germinate. They're going to do well. So again, today is the 7th of April. These were started on March 4th. About a month, really probably at 3 weeks, you can start feeding your plants. And what you're looking for the starting is the first set of true leaves. That's these leaves right here. The leaves below are the first leaves that break out. They are not true leaves. They just break the surface, collect sun, and start helping your plant grow. So when these leaves are established, a little bit smaller, you can start giving them the worm casting tea. I'll show you that recipe in a minute. But when they get to this size, you're going to pick the best plant and then cut out the extras. Now, why I put so many in here, I don't remember. But again, you're only putting in 2 to 4 seeds. You want to cut the stems because if you're pulling out the plants you don't want, it's going to pull the roots out. It's going to damage the roots of the plant that are staying in there. Again, just pick the stockiest plant, cut it back, and I'm going to do this for the whole tray, and I will come back and show you the feeding. But let me just finish this up. Don't put in 6 or 8 seeds like I did here. I might have been testing the germination rate. Of course, being 52, you forget why you do things. That's why I have to label everything. But these are 2 varieties, thinned down to the strongest single plant. Here's 2 in here still. And now that I've removed the extra plants, these can continue to grow in here for another 2 weeks, maybe longer, and they could go right into my containers outdoors or, into the ground. I just want to show you some of the plants that have been growing with the product. Oregano back in January. These are mustard greens and lettuces that I started. Don't have the date on here, they're on another one. But that's maybe about 3 weeks ago. Here are 2 different kales. Okay, they were started on 3/14, that's when I did the lettuce. Thyme. Here's a pepper that's been growing for almost 10 weeks or longer, an eggplant, and this is really cool. This is asparagus. And this is lettuce that really needs to get out, but we're having crazy weather here in Maryland, and we might get a snow today, 25-degree weather tonight, and it's just not spring. But again, you can see that the Vermistera castings do extremely well in taking care of your plants. And I again want you to really recognize you don't want to overfeed your seed starts or you're going to cause problems for them. All right, let me clean this up, get the flat, and we will do the worm casting tea. Okay, let's set up the worm casting tea from Vermistera. I will put links to their website, and I also put Amazon links in the description too. It's a wonderful product. I really trust them, and I highly recommend using their worm castings and worm casting teas for your seed starts definitely, and I'm going to be doing videos to show you how to use them in containers and out in the garden. Now, something I want to show you real quick that I thought was interesting is I can tell these are all my determinate varieties. So I did my tomatoes in waves. These have been growing since March 4th. They were put in, they germinated 5 to 7 days later. So these are about 4 weeks old after they broke the surface. Determinate varieties I do first because they get into my garden first, followed by my indeterminates. But I can tell by just looking at this tomato how stocky it is that this is only a dwarf tomato. It's going to get about 12 inches. It's a tiny Tim. This is another variety that a viewer sent me. It's a dwarf tomato, and you can see how short and stocky they are after 4 weeks worth of growth. This is a silvery fir. This is a fern leaf tomato, nice small tiny leaves. And then this is your potato leaf variety, Glacier, where it looks more like a potato. And I finally realized as I was thinning all these out why I had so many seeds in here. Some of these tomato seeds are 5 years old. They're tomato seeds I collected years and years ago. And wasn't sure they were going to germinate, and they certainly germinated. So you can keep your tomato seeds and your vegetable seeds for years and years. As long as you keep them in a Ziploc bag or something airtight, they're going to do really, really well in lasting for years. So everything's been thinned down, and we're going to feed it the worm casting tea. And you're really looking for when the tops start to dry and lighten. This is a good example. Most of these are moist because I just fed them not too long ago, but we'll do it again. But when the top's dry, when the celery, when you pick it up, it's light, that's when they need to be fed. Moisture dries from the top down. So when the top is dry to your eye, there's still moisture down there for your tomato plant. So there's no rush when the top's dry, there's still moisture in there. So I just remove one of the areas. We're going to fill that with the casting tea. Now, you feed these when the first true leaves appear, and then the second one is just starting down there. So these have already been starting to be fed, and that might be 2 weeks after they germinate. Just keep an eye on it, somewhere 10 to 14 days. You just don't need to start early. You don't need to add this in. It's got the castings in there, plenty of food. So this is a 32-ounce quart here. We're putting in 2 ounces. You can go to 3 ounces. When your plants are bigger, something like this, you can go to 3 ounces because they're going to be using up more food. I use an old milk container and just put in my 2 or 3 ounces in there. I'm going to shake this up. I want to show you some of the video I did on this a couple weeks ago showing you how they were growing. These are my cool weather seed starts that I started indoors around February 14th. Today is March 10th. They need to get outside, but these were all grown using Vermisterra premium worm castings. I was using about a half a cup in 3 quarts of the starting mix, and they've been fed worm casting tea, 2 ounces per gallon. But they've done really, really well. That's the only fertilizer that I used, and I just wanted to show you what they look like because they need to get into the ground today. But I have kale, lettuces, spinach back there, mustard greens in the right corner, cilantro, upper right corner, more kale, and these are all going to get into the ground today. But Vermisterra premium worm castings really did well in supporting these plants. They are aged 7 to 10 years. And the reason that that is important, because all the organic matter really breaks down. There were no insect eggs or anything in here. No problems using that product to take care of these plants. All right, so we have our 2 ounces or 3 ounces in here, and you don't want to waste this. I've gotten pretty good at knowing how much my plants are going to absorb, so start with less. If it's water, of course, you can dump it out, but just do a little bit to about here. Wait about 10 minutes, see if it absorbs it. If it does, add a little bit more, and you stop when this is a little bit lighter. It's hard to tell. Well, here's a good example. That's lighter right there. When that darkens up, it means the water and worm casting tea's all been absorbed, and you can stop feeding them. You'll have to do this about every 7 to 10 days, depending on the size of your plant. And again, the worm castings are full of growth hormones, humic acid, the mycorrhizae, the good fungi. The good fungi is a wonderful addition to your seed starts because it will colonize the soil, it will interact in a symbiotic relationship with the roots of your plants, but it will also stop bad fungi like damping off disease from coming and forming. So it's really, really nice to have that mixed into your starting mix. You're just not going to harm your plants by overfeeding them or loving them by using worm castings. Very different than your organic fertilizers, better than your chemical fertilizers, but whatever one you pick, don't overfeed your plants. And I want to go over real quick again. So for the starting mix, 1/2 cup of the worm castings to 3 quarts. When you pot up to the bigger cups, you could go ahead and do 1 cup to 3 quarts. You know, put a little more worm casting into here. That will feed them. And then for the worm casting tea, it's 2 or 3 ounces to 1 gallon of water every 7 to 10 days. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please check out my YouTube channel, and please check out the description to see where you can pick up the Vermisterra products. Thanks for watching.